friends, welcome back. I'm your host, Scott Heaton, and today we are here with my friend Taylor Johnson with State Farm Insurance. We have got a bunch of really good topics to talk about, some things that you might not have thought about, and some things maybe you just need a little bit of clarity on. But before we do that, let's chat with Taylor. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, kids, family, why insurance. Give us the rundown.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you giving me a chance to spend some time with you and chit-chat about things that I think are important when it comes to the world of insurance. I'm a Utah boy. Grew up here in Utah, in Orem, right here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I grew up around State Farm. My dad was a State Farm agent for 37 years. Wow. So I've been around this my whole life. And married. I've got 3 kids, 3 little rascals that keep me busy. And I live in Eagle Mountain, and that's where my office is located, is in Eagle Mountain, right off Ranches Golf Course.
Awesome. Why State Farm? I mean, there's a lot of offices, insurance brokerages, companies, other than your dad being in with State Farm. Was he with State Farm the whole time?
He was.
Okay, so that's a long time. That aside, what makes State Farm so unique?
I think that's a really good question. You know, as I talk to people, a lot of times I hear, "Oh, I've got a broker. They can price everything out." And in reality, brokers can't price State Farm. State Farm doesn't allow brokers to quote their products or their coverages.
Didn't know that.
There you go. You learned something new. So State Farm is unique because we are a mutual company, meaning that the policyholders own the company. And I think that's important to me because when I go to sleep at night, I want to know that I'm giving my clients great coverage at a competitive price, which State Farm has. But part of that premium, I know that it's not going to some shareholder, to a stockholder. Being a mutual company, it's going back into the company to making sure that it's run well, that we're handling claims correctly, and that's a big thing for me. State Farm has been the #1 insurance company for over 60 straight years and hasn't relinquished that title. They've been doing it for 101 years, and that means a lot. Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit of history.
Just a little bit older than you. And so that means something to me in that how they treat their clients. We oftentimes challenge people when they call in. They say, "Hey, why should we go with State Farm?" And we give them probably 1 or 2 of answers. One, we have the best of both worlds in that State Farm is the biggest company in the country, but because they do the agent model, it's like you're working with a small business. And so we've got that backing and the big resources that come from State Farm. But when you call an agent, you're calling my office in Eagle Mountain, Utah. And you may be in Linden, Pleasant Grove, American Fork, or Eagle Mountain. And you're getting somebody who knows your community, who knows what you're going through, what it's like around here. And that is huge. And you're not getting a call center, right? You're calling somebody, and when Taylor or Mike or Giovanna answers the phone, we're going to be Taylor, Mike, or Giovanna answering the phone every single time. Yeah. And that's a big thing. So small business service, big company resources. And the other thing is we like to say, hey, call a restoration company, call an auto body shop, see what they say about State Farm. We go ahead and challenge people about that because we're so confident in how State Farm has gained a reputation of doing things the right way.
Let's pause right there. Let's table that because I think that'd be a great topic for a different time. But I think people need to understand that because I've had that experience, right, where you work with a different insurance company, one of the big guys, but when you're in an accident and you need help, everything changes. Yep. So anyway, we'll circle back talk about that at a different time. But today you want to talk about liability limits as they pertain to auto insurance.
Yeah, Scott, when you talked to me about doing this podcast, I was very excited to spend some time with you. That was the first thing that came to mind about what potential topics we may be talking about is the liability limits in regards to auto insurance. And I think there's some misconceptions about what that really means because the insurance world has changed to where so much is done digitally, which is convenient and nice, but there's a lot of people, as I talk to them, they don't understand what their coverages mean. They just click some buttons online and they get a quote,
Yes.
And then they say, oh, great, I've got insurance, but what does those liability limits mean?
And they're looking for bottom line too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the cheapest insurance, most affordable? We'll call it the most affordable, right? Insurance that I can find, but usually it's at a cost to these limits you're talking about. Which again, I think is going to apply to why State Farm is such a great company to work with. But anyway,
Exactly.
back to limits. Sorry.
Yeah, limits. So when you're looking at an auto insurance sheet or a quote, whether it's online or if somebody's mailed you a copy of your quote, I usually say it's the big numbers. So when you see 50,000 / 100,000, what does that mean? And so there are two types of liability coverages that we're referring to. That the two numbers that I mentioned. So let's say 50,000 / 100,000. What that means is that is your bodily injury liability protection. And I've had some people get that confused with, well, that's what I'm covering my car for. That's not the case. So where that comes into play is if you cause an accident. So let's say you and I are driving down the street and you hit me, Scott.
We never do that though.
And we're not going to do that.
No.
But in this scenario, you hit me and I get hurt. And your liability limits on your auto insurance is 50,000 / 100,000. What that means is you've got up to $50,000 to go towards my medical expenses because you hurt me in a car accident. Now, let's say one of my kids are with me, or if I'm on a date with my wife and there's multiple people hurt in my vehicle, you've got up to $100,000 for the total accident. So it's $50,000 per person, up to $100,000 for the accident to go towards my bodily injuries and my medical costs. So that's the bodily injury liability limits. Now there's going to be a third number that's usually listed right by it, and it's property damage liability. And usually that number in this scenario is maybe 50,000. And that's going to go to replace my car or fix my car or any other physical property that you damage. So that's, and why we call it liability is, what if I was driving a Ferrari? I don't drive a Ferrari, but if I was driving a Ferrari...
Let me know when you start driving a Ferrari.
I know. I'll let you know. It's probably a never, but if I was driving a Ferrari, well, guess what? That Ferrari is worth more than $50,000. And so what would happen is if you hit me in my Ferrari and it causes $150,000 worth of damage, but you've only got $50,000 of property damage, guess what? You could be on the hook for $100,000. And that's a liability that's your liability. So why I chose this as one of the first topics to talk about is because when I have a client get into their car, that's one of the first things that I worry about is what they may be liable for. Life is hard. We're all trying to work towards retirement, taking care of kids, our family, and our personal assets are at stake if we don't have the right liability limits.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, a lot to talk about. For folks who might be watching, listening here, and that have questions, or maybe would just like a little more information about what we just talked about, or maybe they're actually in the market and they're looking for it's time to renew their policy. How do they get a hold of you, and are you willing just to take a phone call, answer a few questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Even if you want to just call me and say, hey, I've got a couple questions about what does this coverage mean, or what should I be looking for, I'm happy to just shoot the breeze and talk to and ask questions. But the best way to get a hold of me is you can reach me at 385-345-4233, or you can go to my website, www.taylordjohnson.com, and you can reach me there and be happy to talk to you.
Awesome. Dude, thanks so much for dropping by. This is good stuff. Hopefully you guys learned something, and if you need additional information or you just need a quote for anything that is insured, reach out to Taylor. I know he's going to take great care of you. And again, thanks for dropping by, and we will see you next time.